Basi mañana, basi mañana, basi mañana vale la baro. Basi mañana, basi mañana, basi mañana vale la baro. Big up, Busi, Malasela, Zululand. Namaste, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mir, ni hao, buenos dias, buenos tardes, heseche, akwaba, welcome. What up though? This is Convo with Zuri G. I am Zuri G, aka Peter Johansson OCC. And today we have a conversation with Sister Michelle Cooper. This conversation was years ago. It's from the archives again. And Sister Michelle and I meet over 20 years ago in South Africa, in the land of Xhosa. I usually pronounce that better, but Xhosa, the Xhosa people. Cape Town, South Africa. Sea Point, to be exact, or increasingly exact. So anyways, when I was doing a study abroad, my flatmates and I are at the shopping mall, and we meet her. She provides us with hosting of the city and shows us some of the places to go to in Cape Town. Very congenial, very friendly, and we keep in contact through the years. And so she actually moves stateside within the past decade, and we reconnect on Facebook. And I mentioned that I'm doing a series a number of years ago, interviewing mixed brethren and giving her experience being colored, being part of the Cape Coloreds. She's Cape Colored. She shares her insight from that experience, and I think it's something that's very valuable for mixed people on this continent and actually around the earth to have first-hand experience, second-hand testimony of what life is like in a community, in a physical community, a social community, that a cultural community that is mixed. Particularly for people who are, even at this very moment, oblivious towards being mixed themselves, that it can actually be a thing, that other people are like that. And additionally, so I know for myself, coming up from Ohio in the Heights, there's mixed meaning, or it's called multicultural, diverse, which basically, again, 30-40 years ago just meant black and white. But that was my experience growing up. And there are a number of mixed people who are legit mixed like myself, but who are mixed and like very obvious about it. But it still wasn't like a main thing. And we didn't talk about it. We knew it. We recognized each other. We were like, oh, hey, he got that too, or she got that too. But we didn't talk about that too tough. And we were the culture was like, oh, just be glad that we accept multiculturalism. So you should be happy you're here. We celebrate it here. So anyways, that was my experience growing up. Now, that being said, when I go to Cape Town, and I'm introduced to like, yo, this is like a city. It's a not all of Cape Town is colored, but Cape Town is known for being highly populated, and there are municipalities that are specifically, particularly within apartheid law, specifically colored. So, anyways, it was somewhat mind dazzling to be in that experience of just like everybody here is mixed, and it's like all different types of mixed. Not just African and European, but we have Chinese, we have Indian, Desi, we have Malay, East Asian from Southeast Asia, and additionally Muslim, Christian, Israeli, and additionally. So it's just, again, like, and it's the norm. It's like that's like that's the norm. So, anyways, it's still somewhat overwhelming for me to perceive that at the moment, and it's not some type of Shangri-La or utopian, but it's just when one is experiencing that dearth of affirmation of one's identity as mixed heritage, and being able to like readily claim all one's ancestry. To be in a city, to be in a municipality, to go to the nightclubs, or to go to community spots, and everybody's this way, and it's not even like we don't need to talk about it, because it is what it is. So, and then to come back here, and where people are like, again, back into the to the garden salad. So, anyways, that was 20 years ago. And so the convo that Sister Michelle and I have, this a few years ago, probably about 5 years ago at this point, talks a little bit about that, and just her experience being mixed, and also it was on the Mixed Spirits series, so she talks about her spirituality, and provides some very candid insight and experience. She lives with her husband and daughter and talks about that. And yeah, I do. It's been a while since I listened to this conversation, but I do remember she was rather surprised at my appearance, because when she met me, I was like a regular size, about 200 pounds, about a little less than 100 kilo. But when I interviewed her a few years ago, 5 years ago, weigh twice that much. So she looked at me. Maybe the Facebook pictures didn't like register, but she was just like, "Peter, you look different." So I remember that. And anyways, that was one thing. And then there's one thing else that I was thinking about in terms of what I remember from this conversation. To be honest, I think it's something I think it would be valuable to have like further conversation, to get into further detail and into specific components of what she shares. And there's a lot to cover, and I try to like from what I remember, I try to like stick to the script of for the purpose of the series, which was just asking a certain set of questions, but it would be valuable to kind of just have like a free range kind of convo, and just like delve into specific components to get a better tangible experience or insight into what life is like, and particularly how to cultivate that sense of community amongst Mélanger brethren today, regardless of where we are, whether it's Singapore, Japan, India, or wherever else. So even Ohio or Wisconsin. So that's what's up. That's what's on deck. That's what's ahead. I think that's pretty much what I can share for the moment. We'll see what happens afterwards. After. Hey. Michelle?
Okay. Yes, Peter.
Hey, how are you doing?
I'm fine, and you?
Excellent. How's everything going?
Good. No complaints.
Excellent. And how are you and Anika and the rest of your family doing?
No, Anika's fine. She's at school today, so this is actually the perfect time for me.
Okay, excellent.
So
nice. So it's been a while. We've communicated through Facebook, but it's been over a decade since we talked with each other.
yes, I mean, like in person, that was in Cape Town, South Africa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Many years ago, back in the day.
Exactly.
So lots of things have happened since then.
I know. I mean, like you don't even look the same anymore.
I'm a little bit bigger and a little bit hairier. But
yes.
yeah. So I mean, we can catch up on a lot. But there's a purpose for this call. So I know that you have things to do, and I want to be respectful of your time. So I want to be mindful of that.
just to give you some an update about what I've been doing. So I graduated from law school, and I don't practice law. I kind of follow a spiritual journey, and I start doing interfaith work and building peace and understanding, cooperation between different religious and ethnic communities. And so I also do outreach for mixed people, for people of mixed ethnicity.
Okay.
And so this project is kind of blending those two different fronts of building bridges. And so I'm just talking with a number of friends who are mixed and have a mixed heritage about each one's experience. And so I think you, being from South Africa, being from Cape Town, have a very interesting and valuable experience and perspective and insight to share. So I'm interested in hearing that and sharing that with others. The idea for this project is to help others have courage to kind of talk about this subject, and particularly for other young mixed people to kind of hear about other people's stories and be able to identify with others, and feel part of a collective, a community, and feel strengthened to be just an individual and follow individuals' pursuits. So you share a little bit of your message before about determination and opportunities, and following your path in life, and so I think that's valuable to share with the people who see this interview. So does that sound okay?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Okay, cool. So I have 5 questions, and I basically tell you the gist of the questions before. So I've learned to just stick with the questions. And if I may pose some follow-up questions. If you just want to go on to the next question, that's fine. We can just move ahead and continue on. So does that sound all right?
Oh yeah.
Okay, cool. So do you have any questions or anything you want to say off the bat?
No, I wanted to know the picture that you see of me, is it my portfolio picture on Facebook, or
Yes.
You see my actual face?
I see your portfolio picture.
Oh, because I put on the camera, so I don't know why you cannot see my face.
Okay. Well, I can see your face. It's just not moving. But it's a nice photograph. What is your husband's name?
His name is Eric, and this picture was taken in Cape Town, South Africa.
Right. I can see Table Mountain in the background. It's nice. Cool. So I'm uncertain how. I mean, my technical capabilities are very modest. So I'm uncertain what the how to remedy the camera situation, but whatever works with you is cool.
Oh, no problem.
Okay. So can you see me? Okay. Not that that's any much of a benefit, but anyway. So let's go on to the questions. Ready?
Yes.
All right. So the first question is, what is the ethnic and spiritual background of your parents?
My mom, she's Roman Catholic, basically.
Okay.
And my mom, she is what you called a Cape Colored.
Right.
And like I told you before, I don't know anything about my dad.
Sure.
I haven't met him, never made any contact. So I don't know if it's a myth, if he does exist, but my mom, my mom raised me as a single mom, so I've never had any father. Sure.
So in the United States, race is very charged, and there's a lot of there's polarity, historic like differences between ethnic communities, and so it's been kind of like there've been finite boxes. And particularly between people of African descent and people of European descent, it's been either one or the other. And there's been actually laws that stipulate that if a person has, the phrase goes, 1 drop of African blood, the person is considered of African descent. And it's been kind of tried to again, maintain the differences. And so recently, within the past few decades, there's been a lot of progress to kind of build reconciliation, and there's been this mixed movement to strengthen individuals to identify as mixed or belonging to both communities or multiple communities. But in South Africa, you have this category of being colored. So
Yes.
so you
Yes.
have. Can you talk a little bit about what that experience is like? I mean, I know there are difficulties in apartheid South Africa, but perhaps you can talk about a little bit about what the experience like is being colored and how it differentiates from what you experience in the United States.
Okay, I mean, basically, colored is with the apartheid system, you know, that they actually introduced that law in 1968, and that was a man-made law, you know, by the South African.
Sure.
So it was under the Group Areas Act. And basically, there are 4 groups in South Africa, and I think the first group is like whites, and then you get Indians, and then the coloreds, which is a mixture of any race, basically. And then your 4th group would be the blacks. So because my skin tone is too light to be black, and it's too dark to be white, so therefore I am considered Cape colored. Okay. And we still use that term up until today. And basically what's happening in South Africa right now, there's been some race issues within the past few days, starting from the day after Christmas. The beaches were crowded with black South Africans, and there is a fight going on between black South Africans and white South Africans. And the coloreds are just keeping it all neutral. It's like the colored people are not getting involved because they are thinking that the fight is not between them. So, I mean, like for me, growing up as a child in South Africa, being colored, there was some, how can I say, not opportunities, but it was better being colored than being black, because colored people were treated a little bit better.
Okay.
And I mean, we were not treated like the black people white people were treated, but somehow we were treated a little bit better than black people. With that being said, there was still a lot of segregation going on. I mean, for me as a child, I remember traveling in the train. There was a special area where colored people were allowed to sit, and then there was an area where black people could sit too. And when we would arrive at the train station, you know, like basically coloreds and black people, they get out one side of the station, and then the white people, they get out on a different side of the station. And I mean, their side was much nicer than the black and colored side of the station. And even with on the beaches too, it's like, I remember even going into town with my mom, there was a lot of places where we were not allowed to go because of our skin color.
Wow.
So we experienced, I know that in America, you guys had the Jim Crow laws, and that was like way back, like 50s or something, but I've experienced apartheid up until Nelson Mandela was released from prison.
Yeah. Wow. So that's fascinating. Thank you for sharing that. So, so given your experience in South Africa, in Cape Town, what are some of the observations that you make or that you have about race relations in the United States? How do you compare those experiences?
I mean, I've been here in the United States now since 2008.
Okay.
And I can see, like, here in the United States, I am considered black, but somehow I'm considered light skinned.
Sure.
and in just, you know, I took race and race relations at the a subject at the University of at Wayne State.
Okay.
And I could see that I mean, and I've heard from fellow Americans that basically if you are like light-skinned black, you can get a better opportunity than being dark-skinned.
Okay.
And I think I've experienced that too, because in like some places where I go, darker people, they look at me differently. So maybe they're confused.
Uh-huh.
So I don't know.
Yeah, yeah,
But I mean, that is just my observation and what I've heard, the difference between light skin and dark skin.
sure. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like there are very strong similarities between the experiences. Where there might be an absence of, like, in the United States, there may be an absence of a specifically legal category for light skinned black people, but there is still that, like, preferential treatment. A lot of people talk about the privilege of light skin, and then the whole politics between dark skin and light skin people of African descent in the United States. I mean, there's that history. Back in the times of slavery, there was the experience when the slave master or the overseer would basically rape the slave woman and have a biracial child. Those children were often given preferential treatment and given the slave assignments of living in the big house and having the cushy slave jobs,
I've heard that.
and being favored compared to the ones who work in the field. And so then there's that animosity between the two groups because of that preferential treatment. And so then that animosity is utilized to continue to keep both those groups down. And so it's interesting just to see how, like, all the troubles that exist. But amidst that, there's also bridge building, and there are efforts that are made to connect people amongst the different groups. And so I'd like to think that we're improving in some manner, although we have a long way to go. But anyways, that's me talking. And I'm getting off topic. So, but I appreciate you sharing that. And so that's interesting. Maybe we can talk about that a little bit further. But for the moment, how about we go on to question 2?
Okay.
All right. So question 2 is, what does your mother teach you growing up? What are some of the like the life lessons that your mother shares with you when you're growing up?
I mean, basically, my mother, she never completed high school. You know, I mean, she was a young mother, and her main, she always wanted, you know, my sister and I to not only to finish high school but get a college degree, because she never had it. And I remember from a young age that she made sure that education is important, because education and a good job is your way out of poverty.
Sure.
And mother, she never had a car. She worked 2 jobs, but she made sure every single day that she would check over our homework. And every week, once a week, we would go to the library, and we would walk to the library 20 minutes there and 20 minutes back. And she said, I remember my mother clearly saying that, yes, the teacher's job is there to teach you, but it is also the parent's job to make sure that you are doing everything to your ability to get the good grades. And a main emphasis, you know, was education, and that I'm basically continuing that with my daughter right now.
Excellent. Very nice. So I remember from our experience in Cape Town many years ago, one of the first things that I kind of observe about you is your determination, and you're very strong-willed, it seems like you get that a lot of that from your mother, because it sounds like she's very strong and persevering and being resilient, it sounds like she passes that on to you.
Oh yes, you know, I mean, I remember growing up, you know, my mom, she had to play mother and father, and I mean, like, we grew up, you know, in a poor colored community, you know, like the Athlone area. So she didn't have a choice, you know, to be very tough, you know, and she taught us from a young age that you have to be street smart too. So you have to be strong. And I mean, I remember taking public transportation with her, always watching out for her. And she's just a strong female, and I think we got that from her, my sister, and I. You know, so she's very courageous, and her faith has always been very important to her too. You know, so she really taught us like good morals, you know, and just good manners, just to be a good person in general.
Sure.
You know, and just do the right thing. I've never been exposed to any drugs or any alcohol because my mother set an example to us as young females, you know, that you have to take care of yourself, because if you don't, somebody is going to abuse you, or, you know, there's just a lot of things happening out there. So she made sure that we get the best education and that we grow up to be ladies.
Sure. Nice.
Yeah.
Cool. Nice. So you talk a little bit about some of the challenges that you experience having maybe less material riches to work with, and so education being important. So continuing on to question 3, what are some of the challenges that you experience as a youth? Either as you talk about dealing with having less to work with, or also being colored, the relationships that you have with other people, dealing with apartheid, discrimination. What are some of the challenges that you experience growing up and as a youth, as you kind of enter into the life and as a young adult?
Hi, Peter?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a phone call.
Okay.
Yes. I remember back as a child, actually in high school, I really wanted to take up math in high school, but there was no teacher available because of the apartheid system. There was no shortage of school teachers.
Okay.
So basically I was forced to do German. And I think that just broke my spirit, because I really wanted to learn math. But, you know, and I mean, like, that was like my first disappointment. And then secondly, when I finished high school, I wanted to go into I wanted to become a teacher. And there was still in the apartheid era, you know, I couldn't get into the teachers training college, but I've always kept my hope. And then I just said to myself, you know, when I like finished high school, I'm going to do something else. I started working in a clothing store, and I saved my money because my dream was to travel. Okay. So I basically came to the United States for the first time in 1997 as a nanny. And then my story started from there. You know, I worked for a very wealthy family. So they actually sponsored me when I returned back to South Africa. Okay. They sponsored me. They paid for my 4-year education in Cape Town. So that was actually a break for me after, you know, the disappointment I had, you know, in high school and when I finished high school. Yeah.
Wow. So that's interesting, because as you're talking, often when I talk with mixed people, and when I listen to mixed people talk about some of the difficulties growing up being mixed, a lot of it deals with like existential issues like belonging and identity and fitting in with different groups. And so a lot of it is kind of like psychological or social difficulties. But maybe this might be just because the context. A lot of the people are kind of like in the middle class, so there are fewer discussions about like the economic impacts of being mixed and how that plays in. But you're describing an experience where there are specific limitations based on law, based upon society regarding ethnic background. And so that's interesting to hear, because that's kind of like an implication in the mixed experience, at least within the U.S. But there's an absence of any explicit law that says you can't do this, or that you only have this amount because of a certain ethnicity. But it's kind of intrinsic, and it's very subtle, and it's kind of obscure. It's difficult to like point a finger at, but it's still there. But for you to talk about that explicitly being the case in South Africa, it kind of like it kind of connects the dots a little bit. So
Yes, because I mean, like from my experience, I mean, I didn't really have a problem fitting in like socially because growing up in a colored community,
yeah,
I've always been surrounded by people of my own skin color. So
sure.
basically, we were fighting the same battle. So in that regard, like fitting in society, I didn't have a problem because we were all, it's like we were hardly exposed to white people.
Okay, right.
Mainly, mainly because we weren't allowed in those white areas.
Okay,
And so I've everything that I've my whole growing up, I've just been having my interaction with people of my own race
sure.
because of the Group Areas Act. We were only allowed to go to certain areas, so I've never really seen. I mean, like if you see white people, you see them on television, but other than that, the problems like I had growing up as a youngster was trying to achieve my goals, by taking up the math, and going to the teachers training college.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Well, when you mention that, I think that might blow a lot of people's minds in the U.S. The fact that, particularly in Cape Town, where there's a large colored population, that
Yes,
you have communities of just colored people,
exactly.
and you can go through life just interacting with colored people. So
Exactly.
I think in the United States, particularly here in the Midwest, where it's comparatively people of European descent with some people of African descent and some other ethnicities as well. To hear that is kind of mind blowing. The fact that you can actually have communities of people just being mixed or being colored,
Oh,
and live life just socializing with people of that have that same experience.
yes.
So I think that's, I mean, obviously there are challenges with that, but for people like myself who grow up and are always trying to fit in one group or another and talked about and accused of not being black enough or not being white enough or trying to sell out or being too ghetto or whatever else, and always trying to find our niche, find our place in society, and a lot of people still having that experience, to hear about entire communities, sharing just that being the norm, is I
It's,
think it's mind blowing.
yeah.
Cool. So with that being said, we can go on to question 4, which is what are some of the solutions that you find in life as an adult, as you mature, as you kind of get into your own as a woman? What are some of the solutions that you find to answer those challenges that you experience?
I mean, like for me, solutions basically is just be strong, never give up. Because I mean, I really grew up in a very poor community, and I've been to South Africa last year in September,
Okay.
and I went to my own community where I grew up, and like people, they are still stuck, just doing the same. And if I would have been back in South Africa, I think I could have become a mentor to those
Mm.
young people and tell them, like I did it, my sister did it, you guys can also do it.
Uh-huh.
And I think for me is why I am in a situation where I am right now is because of my mother,
Mm.
who has been a strong woman, a woman of faith. And I think sometimes you need that person that believes in you,
Sure.
because I believe that sometimes, your environment can either make you or it can break you. And my environment made me a better person for me just to leave, that poor community and coming here to the United States and making a better life, not only for myself, for my daughter,
Sure.
and then my sister, because I always had to be an example to her. I was taught from a very young age to set an example to your sister and
Mm.
to your brother. So I would say to young people out there, just try to I don't know. I mean, like they say education really,
Yeah.
and I mean, even if you grow up in a poor community, I think Americans have more opportunities in terms of there's a lot of libraries. There's more programs in the United States than in South Africa. So I mean, I think that young people here, they have more opportunities than we had growing up in like for me growing up in apartheid South Africa. So you know, go out there and just education.
Sure, yeah. Education is very valuable, and you emphasize the fact of being resilient and determined. And so I wonder, as you're talking, I'm thinking it's beneficial. The advice to others of being strong and resilient is beneficial, and it's increasingly beneficial to be the example of that and say, I've come from this and I'm here, and so here's an example of that resiliency and strength. But I wonder, it's one thing to say, it's another thing to do it, as an individual who receives that recommendation. But I wonder whether there were if there were mini successes along your way that kind of strengthen your resiliency and your strength, affirm that and kind of encourage you to keep on going. Because I mean, it's like if you go from A to Z, that's a big step. But what about B, C, D, and E along the way? Were there small successes that you're able to?
Oh
say,
yeah,
that's true.
yeah.
This is working. I'm on the right path.
Oh yes, definitely. I mean, I remember growing up in South Africa, not having a dad, and I basically started. I casualed. I had a part-time job, and I became friends with this beautiful young person, and her father was a police officer. And I remember he would always give us advice. And I mean, like when I started going nightclubbing in South Africa, you know, within my colored community, he would tell us, you know, it's like, don't drink, you know, because guys are going to be out and use you. So, I mean, even for me growing up in a single parent household, I always had some people that was looking out for me, like the police officer, I remember, and then also going to church, the Sunday school teacher. So they say it takes a village of people to help you. And besides my mom being there for us, we also had other people looking out for us. But besides that, you know, I was very determined not to be like my mother. You know, it's like, it's either I can become like her or I can break away from that barrier. So I chose a young person that I am not going to have, you know, unwed children. And I'm not going to end up working in a factory because it's so easy. Most of the young girls in my street, they ended up working in a factory and having a child by 14 or 15 years old. And I didn't see that lifestyle for myself.
I hear you.
So that was all my personal choice to be a better person. Because if I wanted to be better, I could have ended up like many of the girls in my street, you know, because most of them, some of them, it's not only in the United States, you know, with this teenage pregnancy, we have a problem in South Africa too. And a lot of young girls, because they have no direction, by the time they are like 19, 20, they already have like 3 kids or 2 children from 2 different guys, you know. So I think it's personal choice too. And I think you have to be strong. I mean, it depends, but not everybody is strong. And I can just say for me, it was my personal choice and also of the influences I had in church and people looking out for me and for my sister.
Nice. Well, I very much appreciate what you say about it takes a village. And I'm glad that you have, amidst your challenges, I'm glad that you have people in your life that are able to point you in a positive direction. And help to keep you focused and give you guidance along your way. And so I appreciate that. And I think that's critical. And I think, I mean, that's kind of what this project is about, trying to be that helpful. I think the village itself in today looks a little bit different. A lot of it is online, and a lot of it is connecting with people in many different locations. And so the nature of the village is, I think, a little bit different today than it is 20, 30 years ago, 100 years ago, and additionally. So I very much appreciate that principle. And so thank you for sharing that. So that leads us into the fifth and final question, which is, what message do you have to share with the universe, given all your experience, the challenges, the successes, the resiliency? What is your message that you have to share with the universe?
I mean, for me personally, I would just thank the universe for,
Wow.
giving, allowing me, to live this American dream, because I know a lot of people out there, especially in South Africa, they wanna leave the situation, and it's not easy for everybody to get out of the situation that they are in. My sister and I, we're trying to get my brother over here. So I pray every day that maybe he will change his lifestyle, and asking the universe, to guide him, to give him that strength.
Mm.
So my message to the universe today is, never give up hope, believe in yourself. And I know it's sometimes, it's not as easier said as done, but just be grateful for everything that you have, and opportunities will come. Just be positive, just be mindful, and I don't know, it's just like I just spread love.
Awesome, beautiful. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you so much, Peter.
All right, so that's the convo. Some initial thoughts. One, I think it. I mean, obviously, my articulation is less fluid than it is these days. Even though I talk like this sometimes. I don't know what that last one was. But yeah, cause I was like Morpheus being drugged up during that period, and it was struggle to like maintain concentration and just like get my thought out. And without all those ums and uhs and everything. So it may bother some people listening to that. Doesn't bother me too much, but I can see it being bothersome. I actually, I remember during that same period, I had an interview with a brother, Philip Koo, who has the 100% Mix show. And we actually had a few conversations that I already recorded, and I think the first one, or one of the first ones, now I'm going to be very self-conscious of this now, but one of the first conversations, I think, was like 5 minutes long. That's like how the edited version of it was that he did, and I think it was just an interview. But whatever it was much briefer than the actual conversation, probably by like 50% of what the actual conversation was. And I knew like he did a lot of editing of all my ums and uhs and everything, and it's very difficult to tell in listening to the final product. But one of my comments after seeing the video was like, "Oh, you did a nice job with all the uhs and ums." And I was saying that as a little bit of a self-deprecating joke, as I referred to myself in this previous conversation with Sister Michelle about myself as well, because I had that tendency, particularly during those years. But anyways, I made that comment just like her. He's like, "Yeah, I did." Like he was like, "Yeah, it was a lot." So anyways, that was about 5 minutes about my uhs and ohs and ums and everything. But it's challenging for me to listen to, because I knew what I was experiencing during that period. So anyways, there's that. But that being said, I think half an hour was a decent kind of time frame for me when I'm listening to it just a minute ago. So that's something I'm keeping in mind. Now, that being said, one of the challenges is that I'm frustrated listening to this combo from like I said, 5 years ago, thereabouts, half a decade ago. Because that would be 5 years. One of the things that frustrates me is that it's supposed to be a talk about spirituality and religiosity. How many times does Sister Michelle talk about her mother being in the church and how much the church is important? And I abstain from ever following up on that. Like, oh, the church. Let's talk about religion. So that at this moment when I'm listening to it, I'm just like, wow, I should have like got into that. But again, I was being mindful of the time for that convo. I guess I'll chop it up. I'll chalk it up to that. Also, at the beginning, I asked about her mother and her far. I actually knew about her far, and I knew it was a sensitive topic. And so, that being said, it seemed like I was being somewhat clumsy in addressing it again. That wasn't my intent. Even though she made mention of it in a previous conversation that she and I have, there was uncertainty if she knew anything like about what her father's background was. But she was very emphatic in the response to in that thing, and I felt somewhat amiss or whatever, somewhat. Awkward, I guess, would be the appropriate term. So that threw me off a little bit, just because I try to be as conscientious and attentive, and I was somewhat right. So, anyways, that might have been what influenced me in not following up on the religiosity at that moment when she talks about her Homer's Catholic background, because it didn't even address it during the whole combo after that. And I was sticking to a script, like I said, but also, and to be honest, I think the script was kind of decent in terms of like the general framing of the sequence of questions. But it is limiting in terms of like delving into topics, specific things. Sister Michelle emphasizes education, so appreciate that. And what's interesting, and I mentioned this in the convo, what I think is interesting as I listened to it even before I mentioned it in the convo, is that her experience growing mixed is very different from my experience growing mixed. And many people on this continent, as I mentioned, because she grows up in a mixed community, and so being mixed is not even like a thing. Her description. I mean, obviously there's obviously apartheid, but in terms of like she everybody else that she's around is experiencing it in the same way that she's experiencing it. And so the big thing for her is her class struggle, and navigating through the challenges of drug abuse. She doesn't mention like crime or gangster, but that is a thing in South Africa, particularly Cape Town. So, anyways, that's what her emphasis is, and it's interesting to see that kind of concentration. It would be nice to like further discuss like what the distinction is between what she describes as like the lower class, the higher class, like there being different type of classes of Cape Colored communities, lower class Cape Colored, higher class Cape Colored, and additionally, and so it would be interesting to kind of talk about what the nuances, what the dynamics are with that, and what else was there? Oh, education, but I was gonna say something about education. It's been a few years, like I said, since the conversation, and there are certain things that I come to appreciate increasingly since that conversation. A lot of people talk about education, and I love education myself as well, and that's very important. I emphasize that as well. That being said, one thing I recognize increasingly forthrightly is that education, as it tends to be shared in conventional society, is very much geared towards preparing somebody to be an employee, and some employees may be very, very high paid. Some employees may be low paid, and so the notion of education, quote unquote, is often just a matter of a means of being a high paid employee. And so ain't nothing wrong with that per se, but what I particularly appreciate and champion and treasure about education is knowledge of self, learning about one's heritage, learning about one's tradition and teachings, stories, songs, rituals, righteousness, And that's actually very distant from what the typical educational tract is. There are certain things about citizenship and society and perhaps values, but it oftentimes it's for the purpose of being functional and assimilating within the normal society, and that might not necessarily be a bad thing. But when I'm getting a little bit political now, but my point is that education is important, but it's not just a matter of education for a high paid job, but it's a matter of education for knowledge of self. And that's one thing, and that's not to down. That's not actually. It's not pish-poshing what Sister Michelle says. Further, what I'll also share is that, and particularly what I appreciate, and I didn't ask further about this, was that she talks about the determination and being disciplined. The police officer giving her advice, avoiding the alcohol, avoiding the drugs, avoiding the traps, the temptations, and additionally, and that's one thing that I increasingly appreciate these days is the discipline. And so, for some people that sounds like a bad word, it sounds like preachy, judgy, whatever else. But discipline, yo, discipline is how she gets her education. Discipline is how she develops her poise and her demeanor, how she communicates, and encourages trust within others to sponsor her education. And so discipline, just like the education, like people say, once you have an education, cats can't take that away from you. They can do other things, but education is education. Discipline is similar. It's even further. Discipline is a foundational experience to provide, to experience increasing well-being within conditions. So, and it's very. I mentioned in the convo that Sister Michelle has very strong will and is very determined, and that comes from a certain discipline of mindset. And so it would be nice to talk about that further, particularly when she talks about the interest of helping her community back, and she talked about mentorship and additionally. So we didn't talk about discipline specifically, explicitly within the joint, but it's rife within her story. So, anyways, those are some of the things that I noticed. There are a few other things, but I think I've waxed on proficiently for this joint. To be honest, what occurs to me also, I'll say, is that it's actually very refreshing. It's even, this is 5 years later, to hear insight from another geography. Now she's actually located only 100 miles away from me at this point, or a couple hundred, in a nearby province. But just in her describing her life experience in Kipdun, it awakens that a consciousness about people are actually in Kipdun at this very moment. I wonder what life is like, what people are doing, what people are living, what's the perspective about what's going on in the earth, and this additionally. And so it seems, we should have an inter-village network or something like that, where we just keep in contact with each other, say, yo, what's up on your hood? Oh yeah, okay, what's going on over there? But I'm thinking Kipdun, here in the Cuyahoga. We've got to tell people where the Cuyahoga is first. And then Singapore and Manchester. I'm thinking about specific communities. I'm thinking about specific brethren and specific organizations. And then also, now all these are English speaking that I mentioned already, but but then what about Brazil, Sao Paulo, and additionally, that might be somewhat of a stretch because we've made efforts. There's actually some dear brethren in Brazil at this moment that we've been in communication with, but the English, the language communication, I say, oh, you're so presumptuous. Why should they be speaking English? Well, how about your Portuguese? Si, señorita, señora, señor. Anyways, the communication is somewhat challenging, and we've made solicitations about having a video call and doing a recording and this and the other, and the response is, oh, English, no, ese mal. Anyways, so we work on it. I just throw that idea into the ether and see how it resonates. There's a sister whose name is escapes me, but she's militant. She's the militant mixed. I don't want to say girl and it's chick or something, but and I don't want it's pejorative. It's somewhat chauvinistic, but she refers to herself in a colloquial way. The militant mixed woman, I'll say. I think she's based out of Cali, the land of the Paiute, and additionally, but anyway, she's one of the people that I am aware of who's still doing a podcast, and she's been doing it for a number of years at this point. She actually interviewed Sister Sharon Chang a few months ago when I was still on the internet. So anyways, I'm thinking like that would be somebody to do it. She emailed me. She responded to one of my emails a few months ago when I was on the internet. But at this point, the calm situation is in calm. I'm saying COMM. The communication situation is rather concentrated and dedicated at this point, meaning that being very mindful of how of messaging out and in. So all right, anyways, but the idea of like an intervillage kind of check-in, like once a month, maybe once every few months, just say, oh, what's going on over there, what's happening, and nothing big or whatever, but just like it's nice to see good perspective, and it doesn't have to be a whole lot. Like I said, I think I named maybe 5 cities right there. Brethren in here in the Cuyahoga, Singapore, Cape Town, and then Brazil. That's 4, I think I say. Manchester, I say 5. That's 5. So I mean, Manchester, how's things in Europe? Cape Town, what's popping in Africa? Singapore, what's the scene in Asia? Brazil, what's going on in the southern quad? And then Cuyahoga, what's on lock on the docks, whatever rhymes with lock. But yeah, I mean, right there we got a large section of there, and to be honest, I think of like the Mediterranean, and to be honest, my knowledge, my personal knowledge of organizations, mixed organizations in the Middle East is comparatively modest. I can think of some perhaps in Israel. But then if to be just balanced, and additionally if we connect with Israel, or we have to do something in the Arabian diaspora, and to be honest, I'm unaware of there being. I'm sure I still got a lot to learn about what the mixed experiences within the Ummah, because it seems to be. I'm digging a hole, and now I'm climbing up, and now I'm back on the ground, and I'm gonna let the hole stay as it is. If you want to put water in and call it a pool, haha. Anyways, now back to the stream. That's just I throw that idea out there, and there's that. Anything else? Yeah, this joint is a day late. Officially, almost exactly a day late. Beyond a day after schedule. So what that tells me, because this is like the 3rd time in a row at this point, what that tells me is that I have to adjust like my thing, because usually I would work on this on Soleil Day before uploading, thinking, oh, it's not going to take that much, but if I'm listening to these joints, that's like an hour right there, and then recording these joints, and then I don't do the editing and everything else like that, just because it takes enough for me to do this. So anyways, recognizing that, me planning to do it on Soleil days, it ain't happening. So I have to do this, I have to plan to do this before that, which means before Shabbat, which means adjusting it within my late weekend or my late week repertoire. So that's what I'm working on at this point, because like I said, this is the 3rd time, so recognizing that, here, that's what it is. This might actually be longer than the Convo, but if you include the intro. I made a I'm giving like updates on other stuff I've been working on with Asona Ashram Melange Ethos Institute. We're still working with World Service Authority on the World Citizen Village Initiative. That includes the Cuatro stages of pluralism, which is multiculturalism and interfaith as one, which is basically just an interest in people of different lands. Mixed heritage is number dos, the second stage or second degree, which mixed heritage signifying signifying ancestry from people of different lands. Stage or degree number 3 is world citizenship, which is a commitment to people of different lands. And stage or degree number 4 is wealth ethos, which is a discipline with people of different lands. So based on those 4 things, whoever is interested in any one of those, we're building Convo, we're building conversation, and if people need a translation of what Convo is, an organization. We're talking with universities about establishing alumni groups predicated upon the collective of these 4, because there have yet to be groups that are dedicated to any of these. And some people might be interested in one or another of those topics or experiences without necessarily being too interested in another. But in terms of getting like a critical mass to get involved and interested, there's the benefit of bringing all 4 together and bridging the Convo accordingly as well. So anyways, that's one of the things we're doing, again, with universities, but also just in the community and organically. We've been doing this and we continue doing it. And we connect with others who are doing it. We invite others to holla and something else that starts with H but means to build or whatever else. It doesn't have to be English, but anyways, all right. We continue with that. We continue with the podcast. We continue with Cafe Mélanger. We actually have a convo scheduled with going back to the podcast. We have another convo scheduled actually mañana. I abstain from reaching out to people to do this, but this is something that just emerges based upon my routine. So it's actually something that was suggested a while ago. Actually, one of the things that precipitated this whole endeavor of the podcast. So this is a follow through of that. Podcast Cafe Mélanger. If I have yet to mention it on this platform, I complete a post-pandemic rendering of Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech through the auspices of Asona Ashram and Melange Ethos Institute. And it is shared at this moment. The interest is in publishing it with a Singaporean-based publisher. Have yet to receive much response. Less expectation of that at the moment. So, meanwhile, share it as it is. So that's one thing. Another thing. What else? Now I have what I refer to as medicine badges. So when we get into the economic situation, and I've addressed this in the past, like the passing the hat around thing, donations, less. Anyway, I'm not even gonna get a whole spiel about that. This is how we are doing things at this point. For those who have been interested in supporting the cause of Melange Ethos Institute and or Asona Ashram, people are welcome to become a member. Membership is 1% of a person, a family's, or an organization's monthly income. So if a person makes $1,000 in a month, whatever a buck is, then 1% of that is $10. So that would be the membership cost. So it's an intrinsic sliding scale type situation. For those who make much, then the membership is much. For those who make little, then the membership is little. So it's very intrinsically fair. And we take it at people's word. And we have yet, well, I'm gonna be modest with my self-deprecation. So that's one thing that's available. We also trade. And one of the things that we offer as trade are medicine badges. So these medicine badges have words, concepts, mantras, principles, affirmations, very brief, and we trade it for what people are willing to offer for that. We actually have completed a number of trades in the past week. So we are working on the pragmatism of that kind of arrangement, but there's encouragement, and so we have a catalog. There are over 30 initial mantras or versions of the medicine badges in this first edition, and we have actually many additional versions, variations in the works. It's just a matter of me writing it out. So anyways, this is something in lieu of the t-shirt and the merch type situation that we were talking about before, months ago when we came out with the podcast. So the medicine badges, yeah. There are other things as well, but I think we'll just keep it at that. The co-op, and additionally, we continue rolling. So before we become officially longer than the actual convo itself, I'm gonna wrap this up. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I share as part of the shtick for this thing. So I think that's much it. Oh, we're working on enhancing the social media delivery. So in terms of like presentation and the prettiness of what we share, we're working on enhancing that so that it's increasingly accessible and appealing to others, because additional people are paying attention, and so before, where there's less concern about people's opinions and increasing interest in content, at this point we've got content, so now it's just a matter of how to adjust, or not adjust, but how to present the content that we already have, and then how to continue in with this content in an increasingly in a way that's increasingly at people's level, whether that's up or down or wherever. We're on a sphere that's floating in the universe. What's up, what's down, what's up. Anyways, all right, that's it. I say appreciation for those who have the patience and the endurance and the inclination of listening all the way through this moment from the beginning. I will say also, we also, like I said, mentioned Cafe Mélanger, some interesting ideas for Cafe Mélanger, talking about original sin, predatoriness, civilization, where things going, and all this, even the uprest, the uproar, the unrest, all that. That's what's on the agenda for sharing at the Cafe Mélanger Mañana, God willing. So that being said, I am going to say deuces. Namaste, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mir, zaijian, adios, tehe chakaris, esempe na asamudbo, kirlik ofrid. One love and peace, happiness and liberation.